something that's about communication. But you find out that more than maybe 3/4 of every one of us does not know what communication is all about. So we are here today and now asking you, Mr. Chiamaka, Bobby, and all that, you should please tell us more. What is communication?
Thank you so much. Perhaps I should also throw back the question to everybody this evening, and I would like to ask I want to know who has met a perfect communicator. I'm looking at the chat box. If you have met a perfect communication, okay, let's put it this way, yes or no. Have you met a perfect communicator? If you have, please put in the chat box yes. If you haven't, put no in the chat box. Let's see quickly because that search had been going on, and I thought we should also contribute to finding the answer today. So if you have met a perfect communication, a communicator who is perfect, please say yes. If you haven't, let's say no. Interesting. Mr. Patrick, you've met one. Okay. The Holy Spirit. Interesting. Who else? Who else? Former says no. Uzamaka says no. Barack Obama, a perfect communicator. Interesting. That's from Adiba. Who else? Who else? Who knows a perfect communicator? Okay, let's just quickly take the votes we have here so far. At least we have three no's and four no's and two yeses. Interesting. Okay, so we have another one. Yes, Larry King. Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess you're waiting for the final answer from me. Okay. The truth is, there's no perfect communicator. So far as we all are concerned as human beings, there's no perfect communicator. We only strive. We only try to communicate on a daily basis. We only try. And the way I always put it is that we can be meaningful communicators, we can be effective communicators. But honestly, saying that there's a perfect communicator means that that person is also a perfect human being. And if you agree with me, no, not one, we're yet to meet that perfect human being. And so, if there's no perfect human being, it's logical to say that there's no perfect human communicator. And so, we'll begin by asking ourselves then, if that is the case, what is communication? Communication, it comes from the Latin word communicare, which means to share information, to share ideas, to exchange our thoughts and feelings, and to let others know what is going on with us. And so, if we're able to now begin to look at the categories of communication, personally, I like to narrow it down to prima facie in terms of creation and in terms of the fact that we are human beings. So, how does communication begin? It begins with intrapersonal communication. In literature, they call it soliloquy. They can call it monologue as well. But basically, it means that interaction within an individual. That first communication you undertake as a human being to be able to put your thoughts in perspective, to put your feelings in perspective. But remember, it is not recommended to sometimes talk to yourself in public. Otherwise, people will feel that you have gone gaga. But the truth is that every human being engages in monologue, engages in soliloquy, engages in intrapersonal communication, because that forms the basis for even interacting with other people. And so, if you don't get it right, it's difficult for you to get it right with other people. And so, most times, it's important for us as humans to be careful what we say to ourselves. Be careful the kind of thoughts you entertain, so that you do not exude negative emotions based on your negative thinking, and probably project it to other people. Now we talk about interpersonal communication, talking about projecting your thoughts and your feelings to others. And I dare say that interpersonal communication is not optional. Whether you like it or not, you must interact with other people. And so I know what you may ask me now. Yes, what if I'm the shy type, I'm the quiet type, I find it difficult to interact? What happens, or how do I go about it? The truth is that even if you are the quiet type, you're the shy type, you have no option. You must, on a daily basis, interact. In the family, if you're a parent, your children are there. If you're a husband, your wife, and the rest of your offspring are there, and vice versa. And then when you step out of your home, you must interact at work. If you're not employed in an office, you do business. You must interact with your clients and customers on a daily basis. So, what makes the difference is how do you do that? Now, we also talk about what is with us today, social media communication. You may say it's optional, but the truth is that it's getting beyond optional, because if we think it's optional, perhaps some of us may not be here at this moment in terms of virtual communication, which is one of the offsprings of the internet and the digital communication as we find it today. And no thanks to COVID, many people had to jumpstart their access to the virtual space and to the social media, because the brick and mortar shops are fast facing extinction, and therefore people are migrating from their four corners of the shop to the online platform. So you must communicate. Now we talk about the big one, the mass media. It could be optional though, depending on you. But again, if you do anything that is newsworthy, the way we say it in the parlance, the broadcast parlance, you say when the dog bites man is no news, but the man bites a dog is news. So if you are camera shy and you feel you have no business with the mass media, then it means you should also try not to do something that is newsworthy. That's when you can now beat your chest and say, well, it's optional. But so long as you're a newsmaker, it's not optional. But now, one basic fact I always want people to understand about communication is that it involves the five W's. Who, who, which is who is saying what. And it takes us to the second one, what. Then why. Why are you saying what you're saying? Then the fourth W, which is which. And then the H, which is how. And this is very important, the H, how you say it. And so it's not just about the words, it's not just about what we say to one another at home or outside the home, but it's also a whole lot about how we say it. And therefore, it's interesting to know that when you talk about the communication process, 7%, just 7% is all about the content of your communication, which is like what you're saying, right? Then 38% is about the tone of your voice. And so sometimes you overhear someone saying, "Stop shouting at me." Or someone say, "Can you imagine how he was talking to me?" All this is about the tone. So he's not even interested in what the person said to him. His interest is how he said it, the tone of voice he used when he said it. And then the big one, which is nonverbal, takes 55%. So, if not anything, I would like us to take this home today that sometimes we shouldn't focus just on our words because it's just 7% of the total communication process. We should also focus on the tone of our voice, which is 38%, and then the big one, nonverbal, which is 55%. And this includes all those things you didn't say but was heard: your body language, your gesture, your demeanor, your facial expression, your eye contact. All these are very important. Or have you ever wondered why some women in marriages, for instance, can argue that their husbands do not love them? And then when you pray for them to find out what made them to get to that conclusion, they'll tell you that, well, he doesn't say I love you to me, right? And then you also ask for them, say, how do you mean? Are you telling me that all this while you're married to this man, he has never said I love you? And then you hear the woman say, well, not that he doesn't say it, but the way he says it. So you see that 38% we're talking about the tone of the voice. So it doesn't sound convincing to this woman. So even though the word is there, the content, which is 7%, it doesn't mean anything to her. She's actually looking at the tone of his voice when he says, I love you. And then again, she's also looking at the body language. Imagine when a man says to his wife, honey, I love you, as opposed to when he says, I love you. You see, this last one sounds like this is what you've been yearning to hear, right? I have said it, and so what? So let's move on. As opposed to the first one, which sounded like love itself. And I bet you, whoever that woman is, will actually mellow at these simple three words, simply because of the way, the tone of voice of her husband, and then the body language as he says it. Now, let's talk about another issue in communication that is very important, and that is the fact that communication is irreversible. I'd like us to cast our minds to a situation whereby, for instance, you get a chicken. You went to the market, you bought a chicken, and then you decided that from this market, I'm going to start removing the feather of this chicken till I get home. And then you start. The intention is that by the time you get home, you are actually still going to retrace your step and pick up the feather and put it back on the chicken, and voila, the chicken will remain intact. I would like to ask you, is that possible? Is it possible that by the time you remove the feather from the chicken, that you'll be able to put it back? Now, that is exactly the case with communication. It's irreversible. Once it goes out, you can never retrieve it. And so, what that says to us is that we must be careful what we say. Think twice, count to 10 before you speak, especially when you're angry. Because there are some words we say to ourselves in the family as husband and wife, or we say to our children, or our children sometimes say to us, that we sleep and we regret it. But unfortunately, we can never retrieve it. Second issue about communication, it is complex. When we defined it, we said it's communicare, it means to share. But honestly, it's not as simple as that. Reason being that What you say may not be what I hear, and what I hear may not be what I feel you said, and what I feel you said may not be what you intended to say to me. Already, I'm confusing you, right? So that's typical situation for us when we communicate. And the truth is that in many situations, we fail to say what we mean, and our listeners fail to hear what we said because there are so many variables, there are so many things going on, intervening variables that will determine what the listener thought he or she heard or what the speaker thought he or she said. And so it means we must be extra careful. Now, the third issue about communication, but good thing is on the positive side, is the fact that communication is a two-way traffic. It's a give and take process. Yes, there's a sender, there's a receiver, and then there's the message being encoded. But in as much as we've said that it's not that simple, there are complications. It's also important for us to ensure that we give feedback. And that's what I mean when I say that it is a two-way traffic. So at home, even if you feel you're the quiet one, you're the shy type, um, and you don't want to talk, the fact that your spouse speaks to you means that you have to respond. Yes, it's a two-way traffic. You don't have to keep quiet, especially so much so that it might degenerate to silent treatment. And that is detrimental to communication. And so it's very important for us to understand the process of communication in order for us to strive to be near perfect, even though it might be humanly impossible. But the truth is that when we have that mindset to get better at it, to communicate better with our spouse, to communicate better with our children, it shows that we are working hard. And the people at the other end will definitely appreciate the effort we are making in order to keep the family together for progress, for peace, and for prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chiamaka. I learned a lot, but well, we will serve the questions later on because I have some questions too that I would like to ask you. But I think in the course of when we start talking, when we're talking about, we'll at least maybe the next question will be able you'll be able to go in further about the whole gist.
Mm.
Now I think while waiting for our prof, I'll go on to ask Mufe and Patrick now to tell us because now we are the Chiamaka already told us about what communication is and more or less about how to effectively, like somehow to communicate with each other. Now, what I would like to ask you is how how do you think that husband and wife can effectively communicate with each other? Like she said, there's nothing like perfection. There's nothing like perfect communication. So in your own way, you've been married for some time, and I'm sure you would like to share some few with things with us. Like I said earlier on, it's not perfect. You have negative time, you have positive time. So I'd like you to share with us something that you think that we can, like something that we all benefit from, and tell us more about how you think that husband and wife should do it. Thank you. Floor is yours.